Greetings and welcome to Metaphysical Awakenings with Barbara and Eric. This is episode 12. That's right, the dozen right here. And our episode is titled, The Calvary Can't Come Until You Call Them. Very powerful title and also a very powerful number. I was super excited once we reached number 10. I was like, yes, we're there. And you were saying, oh, I'm going to be really excited when we reach number 12. I was like, well, that's two more, I guess so. But yeah, a dozen feels better than just 10. So yeah. So tell me a little bit about this title that you suggested.
Well, it came to me at church on Sunday, and I can't exactly remember why. But the point being, with free will, as we have free will on this earth plane, the divine will not step in on our behalf unless we call them, we invite them, we express our desire and our need for them. Free will is a gift. And that is, we've spoken about this once before in another episode a ways back. But the point being that God gave us free will to either call him or not call him, to do this or that, doesn't matter. This is our human experience for this lifetime, and it is up to us to create that which is ours to do. So we can't call for help. You can't call in the Calvary. The Calvary will not come, rather, until you call them in. You see what I'm saying? I'll repeat that because I got that wrong. Another faux pas.
We're all good?
Okay.
We're human?
Exactly. We're stuck in this human condition together, aren't we? But the point being, the Calvary is not going to come and save you unless you call them. They won't know that you're having a problem. Just the old days, Calvary, anyway. The long story short is if you're having a problem, you have to reach out and call God, a friend, something. But if you have a problem and you're going to sit with it and have an expectation that somebody's automatically going to know what's going on with you or what's wrong with you, or God's just supposed to come and fix this, you've got free will, ladies and gentlemen, and that free will mandates that you must call in God, the angels, the archangels, the masters, the saints. You have to call for help or it's not going to come.
Yeah, in every movie that I've seen that's taken place in Renaissance times or medieval times, every time that the Calvary comes, they've been called to come there. I can't think of a situation where the Calvary has arrived when no one has called. How else would they know to come and save that person or these people unless they are called to come? Right. Calvary is ready and awaiting to do that. That's their job, but they just need to know what the need is. And you brought up free will, and this has been a topic that has come up in many of our episodes here. And you called it a gift, and I think this might be God's greatest gift to us as humans, is free will. Because as humans, if God wanted just to have everything done in God's way, then it could happen that way.
Right, it'd be awfully boring.
Yeah, it probably would be. I don't know what our lives would be, but
that would mean there was a preset for us to follow. See, I think that if we came down here and there was a preset that God had for us to do, then we would be extremely limited and we wouldn't have this whole human experience.
That's right. And by free will, we have all these different trajectories that intertwine between other people's trajectories that create this amazing universe of possibilities and experiences that we get to live. And some of these are more pleasurable than others, and some of these are hard to deal with. But that's part of the human experience, and overall, I think it's a blessing.
Oh, of course it's a blessing, because we have the free will to do whatever we want to do. Now we have laws and
That's right.
things, and the ramifications for bad behavior. But, the point being, for me at least, growing up as a little Presbyterian girl, I didn't really get the concept of God at all. God, when I was little, was this mean person who called me a sinner, and I just didn't get a whole lot of that until I was, old enough, 8 years old. They put me in the choir because I was singing. And that's where my education of God came through, was from music.
From music, okay.
100%. Whatever, I'm sorry to say, whatever the preacher was saying at the time was just probably my ADD. But the music and all of the beautiful verses, and that was a whole new way in for me.
Another connection to God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My only connection to God, actually, for me as a child.
I can 100% relate to that. Like hearing the pastors talk at church, I would just go off into La La Land and start thinking about stuff like Star Wars. Would I rather design a lightsaber versus a blaster? That was going through my mind when I was like 8 or 9. I'm like, this is not resonating with me at all. I was just, and it was around that time that I decided I would never be bored again.
Oh, okay.
I got into, I guess it's a different topic, but
that's okay.
At that point, I realized that I could always go inside instead of just receiving what's outside. I could just tune out things that are not resonating with me, and I could just decide to focus on what's internal. And at that point, I never became bored again, and I haven't been since that point at 8 or 9. I'm just like, I can always go inside.
Because you're creative. You have that strong creative gene, and that internalizing is where your talents were born and grew, but it also, your intellect, you were able to rationalize. You're very good left brain and right brain. All right. But going within, as you said, was actually kind of communing one-on-one with the one, whether we knew it or not, also.
I think it was.
We don't realize it. We don't recognize it for what it is, especially when we're silly little kids.
And you're absolutely right, because at that place, I was stuck for an hour in that one place at that one time. Whether I wanted to hear that message that wasn't resonating with me, or just be with the one and commune with the one, I was able to do that. And you're absolutely right.
Wow.
That time allowed me to be in connection with God.
Yeah.
In a different way than maybe what was church, but you're wow.
Your own unique individuality led you to your own expression of God.
Yes.
In that quiet time. And
it was a quiet time, yes.
That's awesome.
It was a very introspective time, and I guess I wasn't really resentful of it. I was resentful of having to go to that church maybe, but
right.
In a way, it allowed me to have that quiet time that if I never was forced to go into a certain year, that
right.
Actually I decided to, once you get to a certain year, you can be like, okay.
Yeah. But but there again, it's time never wasted. We don't recognize or know what's going on when we're little necessarily, but in that forced quiet time, you started to create your own unique experience with God.
But the thing is, I called it in. I called in that Calvary. I'm like, unknowingly, hey, I want something. I want to receive something. I want to know something.
Awesome.
And that something came to me.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? We're sitting here thinking.
Yeah, me too.
I
didn't. recognize that at that point. I thought it was just a little bit more surfacey, but no, it's a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I was not happy with what I was receiving, and I was calling in something different.
Right.
And that came to the mind of a 8-year-old, and maybe that was Star Wars are starting to just think about certain conceptual things, or just be in peace, or be in communion with God. So like during those religious services, of course, I was thinking about more divine things like God and Jesus and all that. It was just in maybe not the same exact ways that they were preaching about it.
Yeah. I think in what I was hearing when you were talking was that during that quiet time of the Star Wars and the lightsabers and all of that, though, you were contemplating the universe, my dear.
Yes, how it works. Right. Like how would a lightsaber actually work? Like to me, like it still doesn't make sense how it works.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But one day it will. But at that point, I was contemplating that, and that's contemplating one thing to another thing to another thing to ultimately leads up to God. and
Isn't it funny how it all kind of makes a circle when you follow it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to follow this line of thought. I'm going to wind up with God, but here we are. We come all the way back around, mm-hmm. and another opportunity to invite God in, or to continue on our own path. And God was already there. That's the thing. God's already there and waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And we are sparks of the divine sparkler, right?
I love that. That's
great.
Great.
Yeah, that's one of my mentors used to put it like that. We're just sparks of the divine sparkler. And sooner or later, there are no atheists in a foxhole. Remember that one?
You're talking about in wartime.
I'm talking about, in wartime, or in the time of extreme dire need, whatever your foxhole is.
Oh, those people who are atheists, all of a sudden, like when they're at that moment of like absolute need, they call upon something.
They can, yeah, and it's like, God's going to be there waiting, and we can push aside or not believe, or whatever the case may be. And, I can't speak to what an atheist thinks or knows or does or anything like that. But I can say that at a time when our very life is on the line, usually we're calling out to God.
Yes.
Or whomever your religion is, for you, what your definition of God may be.
In fact, in a lot of movies, there's a scene to where someone who has never believed in God is at their death time, calling out to God for the mercy at that point. So right. There's like a certain sense in everyone's soul that there is that, and we have the free will to believe that there's not.
Right.
And for a while, I was very uncertain too.
Oh yeah.
I never put myself as an atheist, but I was an agnostic for a while.
I was one pissed off Christian. I mean, I can't call it any other way. When I had been going to church all of my life, singing all the songs, doing the things that, I'm quote unquote supposed to be doing. And then my mother is killed in a car accident. And in my life, there was no God. No God would take my mother from me. That I was young, and those are misconceptions.
How old were you?
I was 28, but I didn't, I was kind of off on my own. I had been in Las Vegas singing, doing all of these things, and, I came home right before my parents were in that accident. And the long story short is, my mother passing away did two things. In the beginning, it made me so mad at God that I swore I would never talk to God again. There was no God. I hate you, God. That just don't even, ministers, don't come to my house and talk about, don't say that God word, because there is no God who is going to take my mother from me.
Wow.
However,
I think there's a lot of people who are in that current state.
oh God, yes. Yes, because...
And that makes so much sense, because that's so much hurt, and like, why would God allow that?
You cannot see past the pain that is all enveloping, all demanding, all everything that you are in that moment. I wasn't having it. I just wasn't having it. And interestingly, this got turned around in the most amazing way.
Okay.
My mother passed, and I had, ministers come into my house, in their kindness and their love. And believe me, I was just not open at that time, but they meant well. And, I appreciated the time and all that good stuff. Well, anyway, about the second visit of my regular pastor, who I actually liked, I was, working at the church intermittently as a stand-in music director. And I said, how are you doing? He says, I'm doing fine, but how can I talk to my mother? Well, Barbara, that's not something that you can do anymore. You just have to accept the fact that your mother has passed away, and that, nope, that's not acceptable. Thank you for coming. I love you from my heart, but thank you for coming.
Correct.
I am not one to take no or I don't know for an answer. And what that did was put me on this spiritual path, because I had to find somebody who would help me talk to my mother, because I had all this guilt built up, which actually we talk about guilt. It was regret, not guilt. But anyway, I had all of this angst in this, oh God, I was so devastated. And I just wanted to talk to my mom and tell her how sorry I was for being such a terrible teenager. And she just needed to know that. So I kept searching and searching and searching. And as it would happen on my path moving forward, a book landed on the floor right in front of me. And it was a book by Sylvia Brown. The Other Side, I think it was called. I didn't know Sylvia Brown, and I didn't know about The Other Side. But I started reading what was going on, and it was the spiritual side of things, where there is communication between us and the divine. Because this person had made it through all of the dogma and all of the naysayers, and found within herself that divine right to talk to God in person. We didn't have to have an intermediary. We didn't have to go to a priest or a pastor. We can talk directly to God, and oh my gosh, we can get answers. And I was all enthused again. I wanted to know more.
I had no idea, Barbara, that this was the catalyst that got you into your abilities. It was you losing your mother super unexpectedly, and having all this
devastation,
guilt and regret, as I think you reframed it. I'm so sorry.
Oh, honey, it's okay. It's been many, many years, and I can speak of it without, launching into deep grief.
Yeah. I guess I've known you for a long time, but I've never known that part. So
sorry to spring that on you.
No. This is like kind of the origin, or the start of where your gifts have come from, and where you're wanting to know more of the divine and wanting to be more in tune with God is
So for me, my mother dying in a car accident was like Jesus dying on the cross for humanity.
Okay.
Because my mother passing is what turned my big battleship around, where Barbara, the rock and roll jazz singing, jump up on a grand piano, dance and sing and have a party, turned toward the bigger way because I was seeking truth. What is the truth? Who can tell me what the truth is? And I started seeking and learning and growing and going through all of the different religions and gleaning this here and that and reawakening that which is mine was my gift when I came to the planet. And I'd shut it all down because it landed me in a psychiatrist's office. Remember when I was 5 years old?
Right.
I was talking to my invisible friends. I had to shut all of that off. And now here I am, 28 years old and completely broken. I was broken. There's no other way to put it. And I demanded an answer. If you didn't have it, thank you for coming. God bless you. I'm moving. Well, not even God bless you because I'm so mad. But thank you for coming. I'm moving on. And I didn't stop until the day I waited for 7 months on a waiting list. And I paid a lot of money for a half an hour talk with Sylvia Brown herself.
Oh, you spoke with her personally?
I did. I had to. And what I wanted to hear more than anything, Eric, was that my mother was proud of me. Yeah. I had taken over the Presbyterian church choir, and I was directing that. As mad as I was at God, my mother would be proud of me if I directed this choir.
You were doing it because of that?
100%.
Now it makes sense. I was always trying to put two and two together as far as why you're doing that. Like, it didn't. Now it makes sense. Wow.
I don't talk about it very often, but I should, because my catalyst for seeking God was when I was damning him the most.
Wow.
I could not possibly allow somebody to give me an answer that was not truth, that didn't feel right. And so when I finally talked to Sylvia Brown, I cried through the whole thing. But the first thing she said, hi, Barbara, I'm Sylvia Brown. I kind of work. And she says, listen, honey, I have to bring your mother through right immediately because she has been standing here for days waiting for you to get you and I to talk. And she just wants you to know how very proud of you she is. Bingo. Bingo.
That's so powerful.
I was reduced to a teardrop and I melted. Thank God we recorded the whole thing on a cassette because I don't even remember what happened after that.
Do you still have that cassette?
I do.
We need to digitize that. I would love to hear that.
Okay.
At some point, if you
yeah. No, I don't mind.
Or I'll be glad to digitize it and give it to you for.
I don't mind at all because that is my truth. That was my truth. My complete divorce of God and anything God-like was actually a complete divorce of somebody else's opinion and description of God. I had to find God on my own. Do you see?
Wow.
And if I hadn't gone out on that journey because my mother crossed over, do you see the Jesus on the cross to me finding my spiritual way and being who and what I am?
It kind of sounds like you called in your own truth of God rather than someone else's truth of God. And if we're connecting it back to our main theme of calling in the Calvary, that's calling in the truth.
100%.
Calling in our truth, our personal truth, because our truth is not the same as someone else's truth.
Yes. Yes, my truth was I knew that there was something more, but I didn't know what it was. But I knew that it was there. And reawakening my abilities was one of the biggest gifts I could have ever received on this planet.
Wow.
My ability to hear my own mother today. I can converse with her. My dad, for crying out, one of his terms, for crying out loud, Junior. Yep. That guy pulled out in front of us, didn't he, Dad? Good night. I hear him every day in my car. But I went through the pure human side of hell in order to get to where God is. God is truth. Truth for me. I can't say that it's truth for anybody else, but the truth for me was having to put everything down and say, look, what you're giving me is not, it doesn't work. Who can help me talk to my mom? And I stood my ground until I found it.
You found it. Wow.
It was thrown at me, actually.
So, for others who are watching, who are in a place to where, and I'll use your same example because, people being lost instantly in car accidents is something that happens in our lives regularly, daily. What advice could you give to someone who has experienced the same thing that you did, that all of a sudden, their mom, their dad, maybe both people, maybe their entire family have been taken away in an instant moment, and they are just, I hate to use the word, but I'm going to use, they're hating God. They are just so upset with God. Why would you let this happen?
Right. Because that's somebody else's definition of God that we're living in. My God only loves me. My God brought me through wanting to leave the earth plane because I didn't want to be here without my mother, you see. Shortly after that, I lost Joey, my husband. So it was like this double whammy. But at the loss of Joey, I knew a little bit more. Okay. And I wasn't so horribly devastated, and I wasn't mad at God. I was really, really mad at the situation. I thought I had been gypped terribly. And then by the time my dad crossed in 2004, he suddenly came down with pancreatic cancer. And I was in the room with him. It was just him and me. And I was fully involved and engaged in who and what God was for me. And through tears like you can't believe, I took his hand in mine and I offered it up to God. And within 5 minutes, he passed. That is a complete turnaround. And it is, the answer to your question is, you must find what God is for you. Don't be put upon by what others are telling you that you have to believe. You have to believe this or you're going to go to hell. Well, I did. I went straight into hell because I believed a certain way. But God found me and pulled me out of it and showed me the truth, which is why I am here today with Eric, sharing how we got to where we are and why God really is so good. You call the Calvary, he's going to come.
God is what God is to you. Wow. And that's a different expression for every one of us here.
Yeah.
And whenever we are forced to believe that what God is to someone else has to be what God is to ourselves.
It's soul breaking.
Yeah.
It's soul breaking. But we find our way through those who will extend the hand.
That's right.
And we find our way because our intellect and our God self knows the truth of who and what we are.
It does. Going back to my 8-year-old self at church, I knew that I was finding God through examining how the universe worked. And that was my understanding of God.
Right.
I'm super grateful for that, even though I have overlaid that ungratefulness of what others have viewed me to view God as. I'm so glad I had that time to be there, and that time because I did get to see who God is in my own expression.
And it all came together today, right now.
Yeah.
And when we seek, you guys, we find. And it's the finding that is the most liberating and love-injected feeling you'll ever have in your life. Yeah. I think that I just want to say, and we can close this.
Sure.
Don't give up. Don't condemn God until you find who and what God really is for you. Look, seek, find your truth. It's gonna be hard, especially when you are, the word is put upon your whole life and forced to fit in somebody else's cookie cutter. Don't give up. Take off the cookie cutter and take your time, because God's going to love you all the way through it.
Yeah. Find who God is to you, because who God is to others might not be who God is to you. And that's okay, because God is bigger than any one of us, and God can fit all our molds. And just honor yourself, because you are an expression of goodness in God.
Yeah. You went for your nose.
I'm okay. Should we end with a prayer for protection?
Yes. Okay. The light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
Thank you, God.
Thank you, God.
All right. We'll see you next time. Take care.